stop it.
All over North America, it's common knowledge that infrastructure is getting old and aging and starting to wear, and even the bridges here in Saskatoon, a lot of the structures that are here were put in anywhere from a half a century to a century ago. You can inspect a bridge from the top, you know, with a pickup truck and just drive along and inspect it. That's fine. You can even go and dance around in the arches and things and have a look at things. But if you want to see what's in the water, you either have to put a diver in, or you would have to actually put a caisson around the pier and pump the water out, which is unbelievably expensive. The Broadway Bridge here was built in the early 1930s, so no one's been able to see in its entirety what a side of a pier looks like since that bridge was built. So what we plan to do is go up here and get some imagery, and you'll be the first people to see the side of that pier since 1933. So now, of course, we're in a current, and what I want to do is to get those shots. I want the boat to be stable, so I'm actually going to use the pier as my anchor. So we're going to get a bump here, guys. So what I'm using is the engine and the steering to hold the boat tight to the concrete so I don't have any motion. Okay, so now I'm using the power of the engine and the steering to hold the boat 90 degrees to the river's current. Our intention is to try to get a face look of the bridge, of the pier itself. And you always got to fight this thing because the current is always different. And there you have it. That is what the side of that bridge pier looks like underwater. And that's an image that no one has seen since they built the bridge pier. Sonar is data. It's not like it's not the light that we're used to seeing. Although that the images look like they're pictures, but they're not. A sound wave is generated, a ping, and it goes out and it comes back after it echoes off something, like if you were in a river valley and you said hello and you heard your echo, right? Same thing, but in the water. And the further away something is, the longer it takes for the echo to come back. So the sonar beam is going along the side of the pier, but the point of the pier is out of sight, right? It's just looking sideways. It can't see the point. The little purple stuff is because we've got a fairly high power beam right now, and that's over saturation. There's too much sonar in those spots, but that's okay. We don't care because we know it's just sandy river bottom with the odd rock, right? What we're really looking at is the face of the pier and any problems, cracking, shifting, damage it may have sustained in the last better part of a century, right? And from what I can see here, this pier looks like it's in pretty good shape. You can measure, you know, the water depth. You can also measure the size of anything you see under there. And so it's 3.227 meters to the river bottom in that spot. So what we want to do now is move further down and see how deep it goes. Okay, locked up. Okay, so now we're about the center of the pier. Well, that's interesting. They're probably pilings from the original construction, plus the debris, probably bits of concrete and lumber from the original construction laying there. What's more interesting to me is how you see the river bottoms going down. There's a common effect with bridge piers. It's called a horseshoe scour. The water hits the front of the pier and actually curves down and swirls down, and it'll actually over time scoop a hole out of the sandy river bottom at the nose of the pier, and of course that scour hole, we call it, carries on around the corners a little bit too. So that's why these kinds of things are important to find out about, right? You want to see what's happening down there. You want to see if those kinds of conditions are existing. Most of the time, I mean, these bridges are built so heavily that it's not a concern. But look at the water's depth here. Remember, it was 3.227 meters at the back. Now it's almost 5 meters. So there's your scour effect, right? Okay, what I'll do now is just recover this thing. So first I'm going to turn it nose to the current. And we'll ship the thing in place so it's safe. The two transducers are in this head. They're both rotating right now. They're looking around. There's nothing coming on the screen because they're in air, right? But if you look at the thing, this is the round part. That gives you the cone beam, the tight spray. And this long, narrow transducer here gives you the fan beam. The cone beam is very tight, like a stream on your garden hose. We're going to turn it to spray. You got some. So this is a 30-degree wide fan beam. There's 5 of these units in all of Western Canada. One in Saskatoon now. I believe there's one in Winnipeg. And I think there's 2 or maybe 3 on the West Coast. And that's it. Okay, we'll walk around the front. I know police departments and various companies have also used this equipment for body searches, drowning victims, and so on and so forth, because the equipment is powerful enough to be able to produce an image of a drowning victim in the bottom of a lake or a river. We can produce an image of what the river bottom looks like from bank to bank. So you can tell where the channels are, you can tell what the water is doing, right? So any image where you can take the water away and see something without the water is what we strive to do. To be able to see the infrastructure and see what's going on and make engineering decisions. And those decisions always seem to involve millions of dollars. You know, where do you spend the money and so on and so forth. If we can help municipalities, governments, Department of Highways, whatever, if we can help them to make the right decision and save all that money, if you think about every bridge, every water intake structure, every bit of in-water construction across this entire province, we could never keep up. Due diligence from a municipality or from a government or whoever has this infrastructure would kind of indicate that if you haven't seen something in a half a century to a century, maybe you ought to have a look to see what's happening down there.